Parklands of pleasure, Steel City's pride. Steel City country is where we come from. Steel has all gone, hearts are still strong. Fire still burns, oh the furnace has gone. Steel City country, we ride along. Steel City country is where we come from. Steel has all gone, hearts are still strong. Fire still burns, oh the furnace has gone. Steel City country, we ride along. Steel City country, always live on. Steel City country, always, will always live on.
On behalf of the Newcastle Industrial Heritage Association, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this historic event in the life of the city. Would you please join me in thanking Mel Summers for our music today? Thank you, Mel. Mel will join us at the completion of our official ceremonies and proceedings with more musical tributes to the great men and women of steel. We do invite you, if you'd like, there are still a few seats here in our section here. Please avail yourself of those seats if you wish. Well, today we gather to mark 100 years since the official opening of the Newcastle BHP Steelworks on this day in 1915. Today we'll hear about the past, the present and the future impacts of the decision by the company to invest in this region. We'll also honour the men and women of steel who gave so much of their working lives to this great enterprise and this great city. Before we get started with our formal proceedings, we would like to offer a formal welcome to country. We'd like to acknowledge the Awabakal people, who are the traditional custodians of this land, and pay respects to elders both past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people who are present and with us here today. We'd also like to acknowledge some very special guests who have joined us. Scott MacDonald, MLC, Parliamentary Secretary for the Hunter and Central Coast, who's representing the Premier of New South Wales, Mike Baird. Bob Cook, President of the Newcastle Industrial Heritage Association, our hosts for today. Mark van den Heuvel, Acting Asset President for BHP Billiton. Jack Risby, former Newcastle Steelworks General Manager. Steve Hamer, Chief Executive Steel, Arium Mining and Minerals. He's in charge of One Steel across Australia. Steve Martinelli, CEO of Hunter United Credit Union. Bob Hawes, General Manager, Hunter Development Corporation. And Will Maguire, our artist and blacksmith, who did such a wonderful job with the memorial that you see today. Would you please make our special guests welcome? It is a clash with both state and federal parliament today, so we do have a number of apologies. Sharon Claydon MP, federal member for Newcastle, who is represented today by Simone Pengelly. Tim Crackenthorpe, state member for Newcastle. We have an apology from Kate Washington, State Member for Port Stephens. Also from Lance Hockeridge, Managing Director and CEO of Horizon and the Steelworks Manager during the closure. And an apology today from the Lord Mayor of Newcastle, Councillor Nuatali Nelms. We'd also like to acknowledge our event sponsors who have made today possible. And our heartfelt thanks go to BHP Billiton, Hunter United Credit Union and Arium Mining and Materials for their generosity. And thanks also to Phoenix Health Fund for supplying some gift bags today as a memento of this special occasion. But now to our first speaker. Scott MacDonald, MLC, is our Parliamentary Secretary for the Hunter and was given special permission to leave State Parliament this morning to represent the Premier Mike Baird. Would you please make him welcome?
Thank you, John. I think you've got the better end of the bargain sitting in the sun out there. It's a bit cold back there. But John, I appreciate it, and Mike Baird, the Premier, did want to be here, but as I say, it's the sitting day, so unfortunately he couldn't be here. Also welcome and thank you to the other distinguished guests, and I also would like to pay my respects to country. The Premier, Mike Baird, asked me to convey his wishes to all of you. It is a significant day, 100 years since the site was bought by BHP to establish the steelworks. It has been a significant core part of Newcastle and the surrounding regions, and I certainly would like to pay pay my regards to Bob and Orb, who've kept the flame alive and the history alive. And if you hadn't done that, it would have been a terrible shame to see these sort of memories disappear. Today is about celebrating that contribution from the Steelworks. It is about looking back, but it's also about looking forward. And I think the Premier did want to convey to you that this is a milestone. It is 100 years. The Steelworks has closed, but Newcastle is reinventing itself, and that's always challenging. It was certainly challenging 16 years ago when the works closed, but like any vibrant community, it is reinventing itself. It is already one of the significant cities of Australia, and I think the money that you'll see invested by all sorts of organisations and the state government, you will see Newcastle be one of the truly great cities of the country. You're on the water. You have access to beautiful beaches. You're a livable city, a beautiful climate. The industries are diversifying. Education is growing. The health system is developing. So this will be, I think, one of the more affordable and premier places to live in the future. But as I say, this morning is about respecting the history that began with the BHP. I'd also just like to acknowledge the workers who were injured and lost their lives. We're not sure how many there were over the 100-odd years, but I think it's appropriate that we acknowledge their contribution and the loss that those families felt. I can't finish without thanking Tim Owen, who isn't able to be here today. Tim Owen was the previous member here for Newcastle, and he got the $30,000 to assist Orb and Bob to put up their memorial. So Tim, thank you very much. Bob again and the Newcastle Heritage Association, it's a wonderful job. You're a credit to the community, and I wish Newcastle the very, very best for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Of course, we wouldn't be here today if BHP had not taken the courageous and strategic decision to invest in the steelworks in this city. And to reflect on that history of the steelworks in Newcastle, it's great to have with us here today Mark van den Heuvel, Acting Asset President, BHP Billiton. Make him welcome, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I'd also like to pay my respects to the traditional owners, and it's fairly fitting for us, given that this is Recognition Week, which really recognises back in 1967 when a vote was taken and we included Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders into our census. Look, very proud to be here on behalf of BHP, now BHP Billiton. Also very proud to be here personally, given that I'm also now a third generation steel worker. My father and grandfather both were employed in the Newcastle Steelworks here, as was myself and my brother. Now that's not a non-typical story, as many of you here would know. This is quite typical. Having a bit of a chat to Aubrey there before the proceedings this morning, he can obviously describe a much longer lineage than what I have, but it's just fantastic to be able to hear those stories again and reflect on the people that have been involved in Newcastle Steelworks. I was also very fortunate on the eve of Anzac Day this year, so our 100th centenary of the landing at Gallipoli, where we got to open the Newcastle Memorial Walk. And that was really just a celebration of, well, really it was in recognition more for those that have gone to war and obviously that we have lost at war. And there's certainly a synergy with that memorial and the memorial that we open here today, given that we're gathered to really think about those that didn't come home to their families at the end of the day, that went to work and were there in supporting, earning a living, making a life for themselves and their families in Newcastle, and didn't return home to their families at the end of the day. We all know that this is Steel City, Newcastle as Steel City, and again the history is long. If we go back to on this day, the 2nd of June in 1915, when BHP signed a contract with both federal and state governments for the supply of 66,000 tonnes of steel to go into manufacturing of rail. And we know back then it was wartime, and the steelworks predominantly was about supporting the war effort. At the same time, there was also a federal munitions committee that was set up, and obviously they were there to ensure that both the manufacturing and the supply of munitions to the war efforts could be set up through facilities like the steelworks here. The war support continued through World War II. There it was also, where true innovation came in, true Aussie innovation, where we saw the need to start manufacturing some of our own bits and pieces because we couldn't supply them and import them from overseas anymore. Because of the World War that was going on at the same time, obviously supply was short. So good old innovation meant that we needed to make our own parts for our own machines, and that was often off sketches or off photographs, but essentially it was driven by a need. Then we move into some of the other great Australian icons like the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So 10,500 tonnes of steel shipped out of Newcastle Steelworks down to Sydney for the construction of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And then moving on into probably around 1939, the BHP Steel was producing about 1 million tonnes of steel per annum, and that was actually the largest integrated steelworks in the British Empire, so very significant in terms of its output. Lastly, I suppose I would just like to again acknowledge a fantastic memorial. So congratulations to William. I think it's a true iconic piece, and we'll obviously hear a little bit more about that through the day. I'd like to recognise all of the employees over the 84 years of manufacturing out of Newcastle Steelworks. I think we all stand together as past employees in recognising those that didn't go home to their families at the end of the day. And I think this is a fantastic tribute, William, to those people that didn't come home at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Our next guest speaker had an intimate working knowledge of the Newcastle Steelworks. Jack Risby was the Steelworks manager from 1980 to 86 and was there during the early rollout of the steel industry plan. Jack often poses the question, what would Newcastle have been like as a city without BHP? Perhaps he'll give us an answer today. Please make him welcome.
Thank you, John, Dean of Newcastle, and other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. After 46 years working in the industry, it's a subject probably I prefer not to talk about. And we've had wonderful coverage in the press about the industry. I'm going to massage my title a little bit this morning. I'd like to just talk briefly about some of the early developments in the steelworks, which had a great development for the city. We often hear about how the works performed, and but some of the early development was very, very important in the growth of the city. When you think of the early production of steel after 1915, it was so successful that under the guidance of David Baker, the first general manager, that the British steel companies, Lysarts, Rylands and Stewart & Lloyd's, quickly seized the opportunity to establish themselves near the works and produce their wire products, tubular products and sheeting iron from feed produced at the steelwork. And this, of course, resulted in the development of all these suburbs to our left over here, to my left over here. The suburbs of Mayfield in particular and Waratah, and most of you know a lot about those subjects today. But they grew very rapidly after the establishment of Lysart's and Rylands and Stewart and Lloyd's works in Newcastle. And together with that, of course, we had migrants from Britain who wanted to work in those British firms. We also had migrants from Yugoslavia and Greece and from Italy who came and worked and set up businesses in the new suburb. The suburbs grew at a tremendous rate, especially the Mayfield and Waratah area. And after the British firms, we had Commonwealth Steel established. In the early 30s, we had the Mater Misericordia Hospital. We had churches of all denominations in those areas. We had schools. We had businesses begin who were sourcing the industry with all their requirements and the development of these suburbs. Those suburbs are still thriving today, and some of those industries are still operating. In 1935, we had perhaps one of the most important developments of the steelworks for the city of Newcastle, the staff training scheme. Little has been said about this scheme, but this scheme resulted in the establishment of Tyres Hill Technical College, and thousands of apprentices and trainees were educated in that institution for more than 50 years. A great service to Newcastle and a great service to Australia. But when I started as a trainee in 1941, the day I signed my little bit of paper, 74 other trainees signed with me. And when I came back to Newcastle in 1980, our workforce was 11,100, including 640 apprentices and over 300 trainees. And that intake of apprentices was annually, 100 apprentices to cover all trades every year. That great achievement by the Technical College at Tyres Hill must have had some effect, some contribution towards the decision to establish our great university. And I think that's one of the most important things that was achieved at the Newcastle Works. And about that time, that decision to establish a staff training scheme was very timely, because Essington Lewis, as Minister for Munitions, could see that war clouds were gathering, and we need to be able to do everything ourselves, as was previously mentioned. His saying was, if you need it, make it, or go without, and go without is not an option. He was famous for that saying, and the works knew about it, because Newcastle Steelworks, in a hurry, got a group of senior trainees together to make tungsten carbide. Tungsten carbide had previously been made by Krupp in Germany, and we imported that wonderful cutting equipment, which was essential for our ordnance factories and for all our to produce wartime material. That group of people produced tungsten carbide in less than 9 months to supply all the ordnance factories in Australia. Ferroalloys, essential material for making steel. That was important in South Africa. Essington Lewis reminded everybody that the source of that material might be safe, but getting across the Indian Ocean mightn't be quite as safe. So a group of people got together and the Ferroalloys department was founded. It was a case of make it if you wanted it, and it was a pretty exciting time for young people. And I was happy to be involved with that. later, a couple of years after that, of course, we had the situation where there was a call for special steels never before made in the steelmaking department of the steelwork. There were steels required to supply Lysart to produce 45,000 Owen guns for the New Guinea campaign. There was special steel required for Commonwealth Steel to produce Bren gun. There was steel required for islands to supply barbed wire and submarine nets. It was a great time, exciting time for metallurgists, even though we were making steel for a sad purpose. I mention those things not because that had a distinct what I'm trying to say, in 1941 we had RAAF fighter group established in Williamtown, and that was established there because of the strategic harbour and the work that was being done in the heavy industry. Japanese knew that, of course, in 1942, and I was able to witness that from the end of the Open Heart building. But the Air Force now is still established at Williamtown and is a wonderful part of our community. It will be there for the long term and now shares space with civil aircraft at the single runway at Williamtown. Well, we can go on, but to think about what the city might be like without the steelwork is, I think you can see that developments like that in our city may well have not happened without the steelwork. I congratulate all the people who have been involved in organising the day. Driving over was a bit like coming to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Well, the steel industry has changed markedly, of course, since the steelwork closure. Steve Hamer is the Chief Executive Steel at Arium. One Steel is a division of Arium, and we're very pleased to have him join us today to explain how steel continues to impact on this region and this nation. Please make him welcome.
Thanks, John, and good morning all. It's truly a pleasure to be here to represent the hundreds of talented men and women who continue to work in the Newcastle steel industry, and also the generations that will follow them. As most of you know, One Steel spun out from BHP in 2000 as a domestic steel manufacturer and distributor, and today as Arium, we continue to operate several steel businesses in and around Newcastle. 2015 marks a really important year across our industry. We're celebrating two very significant anniversaries, with a century of steelmaking here in the Hunter, and last month we celebrated 50th birthday of our steelworks in Whyalla in South Australia. During this time, the steel industry has had a lasting impact, not only on these communities, but on our nation. Steel's contributed to building our nation and contributes directly to our quality of life, and that's something that tens of thousands of men and women of steel are rightly proud of. Hearing the stories of those who worked at the steelworks brings into sharp focus the many changes our industry has undergone in the last century. Technology, a constantly evolving domestic economy, and increasingly global markets have continually shaped and reshaped our industry. What remains constant throughout is the passion of our people in the industry. It seems that steel gets in the blood of people who are proud to make things and of people who know that they are helping build a nation. If you talk to a steelie, they'll tell you it's in their blood. I've only been around 38 years and still feel like a junior. But perhaps the most significant changes we've seen in the last century are the safe work practices and behaviours that stand in stark contrast with those earlier years of the industry. This absolutely amazing memorial reminds us of our commitment to a workplace free of harm, as nothing is more important to us than having our people return to their loved ones in good health at the end of every shift. Steel manufacturing presents its inherent risks, but we now believe this not need manifest itself in taking or injuring the lives of our people. Safety is a core value for us, and we are committed to being very world class in this field. The closure of the Newcastle Steelworks and the ongoing reshaping of local steel manufacturing has delivered a very different looking region from that of decades past. But Newcastle continues to support a strong and passionate industry that is very much a part of the future. Just over 1,500 REM people are employed in steel manufacturing and related functions in Newcastle, from our newest apprentices and graduates through to those who joined the steelworks and related industries many decades ago. We have all had to change our methods and habits and look and work outside our comfort zones to underpin our competitiveness. Nowhere is this more stark than in our approach to health and safety. Those from 100 years ago would, I think, struggle to recognise the modern workplace and certainly appreciate the fundamentally changed approach to work. Times to remain tough for us, but our people are resilient. We, together, have achieved some amazing things over the past decade, and in particular, over the last 5 years. We will continue to find new ways to deliver new value to our customers, and there are many outstanding examples of this even in the last 6 months coming out of the Newcastle businesses. We have confidence in our future. We have great people within a great industry. There is enormous pride amongst our workforce with respect to what they have achieved over the years, and this pride will fuel what we achieve going forward. We need to respect our 100 years of history as it shaped what we are today. But by working together, we can embrace a future and add new chapters to this 100-year milestone, bringing prosperity to our employees and to the region. So on behalf of my colleagues at the whole of the REM Group, from Mollycop, from Oz Tube Mills, Metal Centre, ARC, One Steel Wire and the broader One Steel Group, I thank you for your ongoing passion and support for steel in Newcastle. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Steve. One of the legacies of the BHP Steelworks is the many businesses which grew up around that time, and many continue to prosper today. Hunter United Credit Union is one such business, and we're joined this morning by the CEO, Steve Martinelli, to reflect on the ongoing legacy for business. Please make him welcome.
Thank you very much, John. It's a pleasure to be here this morning on a beautiful Newcastle day. Firstly, on behalf of my team at Hunter United, we'd like to extend our thoughts to those families who have lost loved ones working at the BHP over many years. And a huge thanks to NIHA for their tireless work in bringing this beautiful memorial to fruition. And in particular, I'd like to make mention of both Bob Cook and Aubrey Brooks, whose efforts should never go unrecognised. Well done, guys. Whether you knew someone who worked at the BHP or not, today is really an opportunity for us all to take a moment to acknowledge the contribution of the steel workers to our community and the development of the greater Newcastle region. Those of you who lived and worked in Newcastle in the 1960s would remember it as a time of revolution, a time of change, a time of innovation, both cultural and political. The time of excitement and transformation in the BHP, who formed the backbone of employees for the Newcastle and Hunter region, providing jobs to more than 11,000 people at the time. However, the individual employment opportunities offered by the BHP wasn't its only influence in the region. The Steelworks was, of course, also responsible for much of the business growth we see and enjoy in the Hunter at the time. Of particular note was an emerging demand for employee support, particularly in the areas of personal finance. And Hunter United Credit Union, or the BHP Employees Credit Union as it was known at the time, was one such local business that certainly owes is significant to the men and women of BHP. What is less known is the speed at which our business was actually formed. The New South Wales government at the time recognised a need for employee credit unions to be formed to help the working men with their financial affairs. This concept attracted widespread support from the BHP employees, and come the inaugural meeting in 1963, over 200 workers had committed to join as members by taking up shares, and in so doing set a speed record for formation, being the first formed and chartered in the same evening, with formalities completed and each director signing the charter on the same night. We all wish it could go so fast today. Within 10 years, the membership had grown to over 7,000 members, and I suspect many of you are still here today. Today we stand strong as the region's largest credit union, still assisting the people of Newcastle. The main difference is that those original members are now introducing a second and third generation to the benefits of their credit union. As a business, Hunter United is proud of our industrial heritage, and we look forward to a vibrant future, growing our membership beyond the industry gates. We're still serving that industrial workforce that formed our business more than 50 years ago. Thank you.
So as we reflect on the 100-year anniversary today, we can also ask the question, what's the future of this BHP Steelworks site? Well, today this site is managed by the Hunter Development Corporation. And to give us a glimpse into the future for this site, please welcome Bob Hawes, General Manager of HDC.
Thanks, John. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I'd also like to pass on my congratulations to Bob and the team. This site, after that terrible storm of the 20th of April, was littered like everywhere else in Newcastle with fallen trees and flotsam and jetsam and so on, and they've done a great job to spark it up today to be able to welcome you all here today on this momentous occasion. So thanks very much for coming, and congratulations to the team. It's interesting, isn't it, about the future of so often set by pivotal moments that can happen that you reflect on in the past. And Newcastle and the Hunter region is certainly a case in point. The decision, or the first Europeans that arrived here saw coal sitting on the beach at the front of the Hunter River, which was obviously the genesis for the coal industry that is now deeply ingrained into the region. And decisions like BHP made back in 1915 to set up a steelworks when they probably had other options around Australia, has also led to that fantastic flow-on effects that Jack referred to, and we still live with today. And now, since then, we've got things like the Williamtown Air Base, which will only grow and prosper given the JSF, and I would imagine that many of you that are in the trades and the industries associated with some of the works around some of these other industries that are now hopefully have found other opportunities in there as this region continues to grow and continues to increase in its diversity. And that's the important point for this region, to be able to stand on its own 2 feet and continue to prosper as it has done in the past. Certainly this site and the legacy of the closing of the steelworks left some enormous challenges. The cleaning of the river by BHP Billiton, spending over $500 million to rehabilitate the river, is a case in point. That was a world-renowned now, and it's a world-leading exercise in rehabilitation of that seafloor. And the works that the Hunter Development Corporation are doing on behalf of the New South Wales Government are also one of the biggest remediation exercises that is currently in place across Australia today, and we are continuing that exercise. The front 90 hectares of land has already been rehabilitated on the waterfront, and that land is now part of the port lease, or the lease of the Newcastle port to Port of Newcastle, and we're hoping that they're able to attract some new industry and some new opportunities to this region, which aren't easy to grasp. And I think that is something that this region has to remember, that we're now in a very competitive situation, that opportunities that come along right around Australia to attract jobs and attract industry aren't just particular to Newcastle. And we've got to make sure that we're ready, and that what we have is we can show the world and show those industries and those opportunities that we have, not only the land opportunity, but the labour and the technology and all the other things that go in to back it up. And hopefully that's what we're being able to do. So it is a big program we've still got to do. There's still more than half the site that has to be rehabilitated, and coincidentally the next tranche of those works is about to start in the coming months. So the truck movements in and out of BHP, the old BHP site, will commence again as more earth to cap the site is brought on site. And hopefully, as I said, this will allow this opportunity, some of these more pivotal moments that could happen, the private industry to step up, recognise the strengths of this region, and allow the opportunities that not only you all had to work at something as great as the BHP, but also for your children, and I suspect in many cases your grandchildren, to be able to have choices to work here and stay here in this region and continue that growth that we've so long experienced, and not have to leave this region as a case of need, but only leave the region if they want to exercise choice. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to be here today. I look forward to being able to finish off the task that we've been given, and hopefully it's a task that's sufficient to lay the groundwork for new industry to be born and new opportunities to be created in this region. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. The Newcastle Steelworkers Memorial Project was launched in 2011. Expressions of interest were called on the 2nd of June, and about 30 submissions were received from sculptors from all across Australia. Local sculptor and blacksmith Will Maguire won that commission and has overseen every aspect of the build and installation since. In fact, we believe he literally finished it off about 2 hours ago this morning. The memorial project cost $70,000, together with generous donations in kind of most of the materials from Arium, and we say a collective and public thank you to them. So today we're here to officially launch and bless the memorial to the men and women who lost their lives during the 8 decades of steelmaking in this city. We invite you to join the Very Reverend Stephen Williams, the Dean of Newcastle, to move to the memorial, to form a circle around that memorial, and you will notice on some plinths some small rocks, and the Dean will explain the significance of that in this ceremony very, very shortly. Piper Sean Manning from the Australian Army Band in Newcastle will play the lament as those who wish now move to the memorial site adjacent to our stage. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome everyone to this part of our ceremony. Many of you here are touched personally by the loss of a loved one or a mate, someone close to you, and this is a sacred moment as we hold those people in our hearts and memories, as we pay tribute to them, and as also we honour those among us who are touched by grief or whose life has been made lonely or difficult because of a loss here. We have on these white plinths some stones, some pieces of what could be steel. At the conclusion of our dedication prayer, everyone is invited to come and just take hold of one and place it as part of the memorial that is your contribution to completing the memorial here today. We give thanks for 80 years of creativity and achievement by the many thousands of people who were part of BHP on this site. We celebrate the many different tasks and skills that have contributed to the steel industry here, giving thanks for the contribution of BHP workers to the prosperity of the hunter and of the nation, and to the war effort in conflicts through the past 100 years. We do remember those who were injured here in the course of their work, and those who are bereaved because of those who've lost their lives. And it is those, most of all, whom we call to mind this morning. We pray that this memorial will help others to remember those people with gratitude and with reverence into the future. And now we pray, first of all, the Lord's Prayer, and then a prayer of dedication. If you know and would like to share in the Lord's Prayer, please do so. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. And now we bless and dedicate the Newcastle Steelworkers Memorial to the memory of those who died in the course of their working life in this place. In the name of the living God, Father, Son and Holy Spirit. Amen. The piper will play again as we place a rock here in this place.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have one more official duty to perform here today. Thank you to the Dean. Today we have, courtesy of the Newcastle Industrial Heritage Association, a unique time capsule, a 3-ton steel bloom which has been drilled and will house a stainless steel capsule containing historical records and other significant memorabilia. I invite Bob Cook and Aubrey Brooks to the time capsule now to formally place it in position. It's planned to open this time capsule in 50 years' time. However, today Bob Cook, President of the Association, will be joined by Vice President Aubrey Brooks to seal the capsule for future generations in the hope that they will remember and understand the significance of today's event. Thank you, gentlemen. The time capsule has been fully manufactured by Arium from a bloom made at the Steelworks bloom caster. Hang on, Orb, you've still got to drill it in place. Can't knock off yet. How about 3 cheers? Hip hip! Hip hip! Hip hip! I'd now like to invite Bob Cook to express a vote of thanks to all involved in staging today's centenary event. Bob, you might even stand up there so we can see you. Can you make it up there? How's your knee? Bob Cook, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, John. Well, first of all, it's great to see such a decent crowd here today on such a fine day. Today is the culmination of years of effort by many, many people. And on behalf of Newcastle Industrial Heritage Association, I wish to thank the many people and organisations that made this event happen today. First of all, to our guests for this event, thank you. Scott MacDonald, representing the Premier, Parliamentary Secretary for the Hunter. To BHP Billiton with Mark Vanden Heuvel. To Arium, Steve Hamer. Hunter United Credit Union, Steve Martinelli. HDC, the Hunter Development Corporation, Bob Hawes. And to our senior revered leader, Jack Risby. Thank you all for attending today. And to the very Reverend Stephen Williams, Dean of Christ Church, Newcastle, for his very moving dedication today. To our 2 musicians, Mel Brooks, who we're going to hear from again, and also to Sean Manning and Piper, thank you very much from the Australian Army Band, Newcastle. I pay tribute to the small band of members of Newcastle Industrial Heritage Association. Without their tireless dedication and support for today's events, this would not have happened. For the many people, other people, who have assisted to make this event possible, we wish to thank you. Our good friends at Arium, and it's hard to express the pride that the people who we all associated with for our whole working life is alive today in the people at Arium, and they've helped us a great deal in this event. Alan Gagler, and I haven't seen Al yet, I assume here somewhere. There he is, thanks Al. Howard Masters, who I think is away, particularly Robert Fenwick, and I haven't seen Robert yet either. I'm sure he's here somewhere. He's out the back there. In the true tradition of BHP, Arium lives and has built a time capsule to the very highest of engineering standards in the world. Come the next nuclear explosion, the time capsule is safe. It's an extremely well-made piece of engineered work. And to machinist Fred Oblasser and all the others at the REMS workshop, we appreciate your effort. And Col Elvey, I haven't seen Col, when he worked there, he helped us in producing all the material for the memorial and the time capsule. So thanks to Ariam and all of the workers there. To Steve Martinelli, Kristen and the team at Hunter United Credit Union. This is an organisation that has supported our organisation right through the last 16 years, for every year, non-stop. So we appreciate our links and connection with Hunter United Credit Union. To BHP Billiton, they sponsored this event today and made the quality and the standard of the event of the value that it deserved. So thanks very much to BHP Billiton. To Darracon, little's been said today about Darracon. Our next door neighbours, occupying the old Central Roll Shop building right behind you all. Darracon, a big name in Newcastle, they have tirelessly, with the assistance particularly of Graham Ellicamp, moved all of these materials. If we said we need 6 tonne or 10 tonne of material moved, absolutely no problem. And they've helped us in many, many ways. So thanks to Darracon. To John Church and John Church Advertising, particularly Craig Erdley, who's around here, he's the tall man. The media work that he's an extraordinaire, PR man extraordinaire. As you're all aware, there's been incredibly good media coverage for this event, and thanks to Craig for that, and particularly John Church, who volunteered to be our MC today to add some quality and dignity to the event. Thank you very much, John, particularly. To all the service providers who have put on our catering and to help set up and present and record this event, we appreciate your work. Thank you very much. And especially to all of you who have come here today to help make this occasion a significant occasion. And we really do appreciate the number of people that have gone to the trouble. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Bob. This Saturday, the 6th of June, the Newcastle Museum is holding a steel-themed family day, and members of the association, former workers at the Steelworks, and everyone of the public is invited to attend, and some of those former workers will be acting as guides. It's an exhibition which focuses on the city's steel history, and they'll also be running a steel trivia session, and Jack Grisby will cut a centennial cake at that event. And over the long weekend, on Sunday and Monday, Richmond Vale Railway Museum will also be holding an open day, and much of their former BHP rolling stock will be on display, and you can go for a free ride. So plenty of activities over this long weekend. I would like to thank you all for your attendance today. That's the end of our formal duties, and we will be sharing some morning tea together, and we invite you all to join us in the marquee for some refreshments. And we'd like you also to not be outdone by the museum. We've got our own cake here as well. So if you can't make it to the museum on Saturday for cake, there is some cake here today, proudly baked by Bob's wife. Looking at Bob, I think it's good cake.
It definitely is. Could all of the members of Newcastle Industrial Heritage Association please now gather around the cake as we cut it together?
Thank you, everyone.
Down at the marquee.
Thank you.
Right. Carry on. Steve, can you go in and Aubrey? Then I might
Good work, team.
Are you looking this way? President.
Look, that's the camera there. Look at that camera. Hey, 1, 2, and 30. Let's cut it off, guys.
That's enough. Wait a minute.
Solid, it's made out of steel. Steel cake.
Right. I don't want that on.
So many families are in despair. I'm a loved one no longer there. Life lost to his working crew. So this memorial we've built for you. Man of steel must be strong. A working day is hard and long. Stoke the furnace, heat the iron, load the cargo on the line. Man of steel must be strong. cargo from the mine. Load that cargo from the mine. Unload that cargo from the mine. Unload that cargo from the mine. For the memorial. Thank you very much.